Hello, my name is Les Wicker, and we're beginning the third of a series of programs that I have entitled 3 Things You Must Understand. And we've been talking over the first couple, and I hope you'll be patient with me because, as I said in our earlier introduction, these things are going to take a little time to explain and develop. So I hope that you'll be patient. But we are sort of in the midst of a discussion about the first of these 3 things that you must understand, and that is that the evidence of creation is that it was created, designed with intention and purpose, and could not and did not occur by blind chance, which is what Darwinian evolution basically teaches, that all that was necessary was the right chemical combinations to come together, and poof, here we are. Well, it didn't happen that way, and what the aspect of our study right now is generally called the teleological argument, and what we're looking at are things like the complexity of our eye, which is oftentimes compared to a camera, and just the same way that you would not expect I just flipped the timer on that. You might be able to hear that. But at any rate, there's no film in it, so don't worry, I'm not wasting film shooting at the wall over there. But at any rate, just as you would not expect a camera like this, and this one here is single lens reflex, a 35 millimeter, fairly simple compared to today's technology with digital cameras and all. But this one makes a good illustration for the eye. But just the way you wouldn't expect a camera like this to wash up on the beach and say, well, look what evolved out of the ocean. That doesn't make any sense to anybody. And everybody knows it. And I am just saying things here today that are obvious to most people who think about things like that, and that is that design and complexity, things which are complicated and detailed and meticulously put together, do not happen by chance. It hasn't happened that way in the past, it isn't happening now, and it will not happen in the future. A camera will not evolve by blind chance, no matter how many, even if you had all the parts of this camera and shook them up in a shoebox for a zillion years, you would still not get this camera put together like this. And the same way with an arrowhead. If you had we talked about the arrowheads, a relatively simple design, although it takes some skill to create one, to make one. But we talked about the fact that, well, I don't know if I said this, but if you had a rock that was the size of the Earth and all of our planets in our solar system, and you pounded them up into little pieces about the size of this arrowhead, you would never get an arrowhead like this that is symmetrical and elliptical and thin in shape, because it requires intention, it requires design, it requires planning, it requires purpose. Even if you had the material, it would never occur by chance. And that's the point that we're trying to make right now. And we're sort of coming to the end of a discussion of one human eye. And we got to the place here that we were talking about how the light waves of this tree here come through the cornea and through the iris that opens up and closes according to the light that is coming into it and what is needed. And then it goes through the lens of the eye and back through the vitreous humor, which holds the ball, the sphere shape of the eye. It's a pressurized fluid, a gel-like substance, as well as the cornea is also a pressurized fluid. And it falls back on the retina upside down, as you can see in my illustration here. And we began to talk about the complexity of the retina. I'm going to finish up here. We've got to find a stopping place to this study. But there are 375 million rods and cones throughout the retina, and about 1 inch. Your eye is a little more than 1 inch wide. And so in this retina, you've got 375 million rods and cones arranged in a very, very intricate, complex, and staggeringly precise arrangement and composition that goes back to your visual cortex, where nobody knows what happens. That's just the truth. Nobody knows how it works to create a sharp focus, moving picture inside our heads. Color picture, by the way. Now, we talked about the fact that the visual cortex, when it had all of these optic fibers that were coming out in front. There's one animal, by the way, that they come into the back, at least one that I'm aware of, which is the octopus. They come from the back, but and there may be others that I'm not aware of. But ours come in the front, and they're all perfectly clear. And we began to talk about the fact that wouldn't this, if God did not, if the design was not such that you have the optic nerve, the main optic nerve, lowered, then you would have a blind spot. And the fact is that you do have a blind spot. But there is a ingenious design that creates your sharpest focus in an area called the macula, which is right in here. It's where you have the very sharpest, actually a little indentation right there. And the optic nerve is below the macula. You've probably heard of macular degeneration. Well, the degeneration of the macula is this area right here. And what happens is the rods begin to thin out as it comes into the macula, and they thin completely out. When they come into this, it's called the fovea. This little indentation right here is called the fovea. It's where you have the absolute sharpest focus that you have in your visual sight. And the fovea is only cones, highly packed cones. There's no rods in there. They thin out, and they are all in a very, very particular arrangement. And so you see the optic nerve is lowered slightly out of the center of the vision, and the macula is placed in the central sharp focus point within your field of vision. The macula is a concentration of rods and cones, and in the middle of the macula, as I said, is a special place called the fovea where the rods thin out, and there is an indentation of highly packed cones, and this is the area of your sharpest focus. Now, incidentally, your blind spot is still there, but you have no awareness of it. There is a blind spot, and there's certain experiments that you can do with your sight, and you can actually see your blind spot or the absence of your blind spot, but I won't get into that right now. But you do have a blind spot, but it's down here where you have no awareness of it because of the ingenious design system and how the eye is composed. There are many, many other things that we could talk about just related to the eye, the organ of the eye. And as we said, where all of those millions of nerves go back into the brain and how they are interpreted into a full color, real-time, sharp focus, moving picture remains a mystery, even in this age of technology and medical advance. Is it simple or is it complex? That's what we want to know. And as I said, that was what I've said here and in the other programs is the briefest kind of summary explanation of some of the workings of the eye.